Hello, and welcome to Through the Monocle. Today we are going to be talking about Bernie, the movie from 2011, the mockumentary starring Jack Black, Matthew McConaughey, and Shirley MacLaine. And yeah. I am Grant Ingram, and like I said, today we are going to be talking about Bernie from 2011. And who's we? Well, it's me. And then the Bernie Tita to my Shirley MacLaine, it is Grant Skillen. How are you doing, Grant?
I'm doing good. I like that comparison. Quite fitting.
Yeah, I feel like I get shot in the back about half the time in this friendship. But just 4 times, not 5.
Not 5.
So a quick recap of where we're at this point. This is our mockumentary series, and last week we did The Office, which was our classic. This is our hidden gem. Next week we have our cult classic, which we've already discussed will be Best in Show, and then we have a Certified Rotten, which we're not quite to yet. So, Grant, do you want to start talking a little bit about the film, give kind of a general overview?
Yeah, so this is Bernie from 2011. Most of you watching this have probably not seen it, like me when I hadn't watched it when Grant had us review it for our other podcast. So this is based loose, I would say pretty decently off of a real story. So there was something that happened, I don't remember the year, where a guy named Bertie Tita shot and murdered an old lady named Marjorie Nugent. And he was, by all accounts, this nice Christian guy who it really seemed like just snapped in a moment and killed her. And then there's some jokes I want to make that are spoilers for the movie, but then it goes on and he's doing life in prison. And this is sort of a dark comedy where they take it and take people's dislike for Marjorie and people's liking of Bernie and just make it into this comedy that is beautifully done and like encapsulates the South in a pretty interesting way too.
Yeah, it's hilarious. So I do want to say we are going to talk a little bit about the crime as well after we talk about the movie, because there's a lot of interesting stuff there. Just to kind of tease that, did you know that Bernie was released from his prison sentence from between 2014 and 2016?
I did
You know
not.
who he lived with?
Who?
The guy that directed the movie. I'm not even kidding. It was a condition of his release for a retrial, which is awesome. Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna get more on that later. But Bernie is directed by Richard Linklater, who is one of my favorite directors. Directed my all-time favorite movie, which is not this. It's called Before Sunrise. So, plug for Before Sunrise. I'm sure we'll get to that at some point. So yeah, it stars Jack Black as Bernie Tita, Shirley MacLaine as Marjorie Nugent, Matthew McConaughey as Danny Buck Davidson.
Matthew McConaughey is so good in this movie. He's every time he comes up on the screen, you're like, this is about to be something good.
Oh, it's so good. It also has Matthew McConaughey's mom Kay in it, and then just some like random people.
Is this gonna sound weird out of context? Is his mom the like other old lady that you see a lot?
She's the one that so there's the two women that sit together. She's the older one. She's the one that was sitting next to Danny Buck in the diner trying to convince him not to go after Bernie.
I think I know.
The mean old hateful B word woman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So the plot of this movie, we meet funeral director Bernie Tita, played by Jack Black.
Yes, Jack Black is fantastic in this movie. This is a note I had from the other one, but it's funny to see Jack Black playing this like Christian guy.
Yeah.
It's singing hymns and stuff. I don't know what it is. It's just kind of funny to me. But he does such a great job.
Yeah, like he's not like he always seems kind of down to earth. Like he just seems like a real person anyway. But this one, like it was to me is funny is seeing the dichotomy between, and we are going to speak freely. That's one thing that we are going to do. Seeing the dichotomy between him like singing in church and performing all these nice old ladies' funerals, and the whole, well, he'd make us look so beautiful. Of course, we were dead. And then suddenly just snap in that one scene, and it's fantastic. Like he
Mhm.
does both so well.
Yeah, and it really does seem to kind of show the contrast of how everyone, like, both within the movie and it seems like even outside of it, the way that everyone talks about Bernie as a person, it really does seem like this was a momentary, like, that's not who he was.
Yeah,
And
and
Jack Black does a very good job encapsulating that and doing that in this performance.
yes, and we'll get to that more when we cover the actual crime. There was some new evidence that was kind of found out after this movie released. There's some interesting stuff. Um, I will say one of my all time favorite clips we have here talking about how mean Marjorie was, and we'll just play that.
She wasn't friendly. She really wasn't. And she probably, there are people in town, honey, that would have shot her for $5.
Shout out to the one person who tuned in halfway through that clip. We're
Yes.
talking about Bernie, and that is a clip from the movie. There's so many iconic, just like there's so many like one-liners. Like there are people in this town that would shot her for $5. There's that same lady saying her nose was so high she drowned in a rainstorm, which I didn't even realize what that meant until I talked to my mom, who grew up in a very, very small town in the South, who described, her nose was so high, like she's looking down on people so much that her nose gets so high that the rain goes down into her nose and she drowns. Um,
My personal favorite is one we it's a bit too long to play, but the 5 states of Texas.
yes.
Where there's a guy sitting in a diner and he's talking about how Texas could really be divided into 5 states. So if you're from Texas, maybe you're from one of these 5 states.
Mhm.
He's like, there's East Texas, what I like to call the carcinogenic coast. There's West Texas, where all the flat ranches are, and Austin with all the
Hairy-legged women.
hairy-legged women. Of course, I forgot the Panhandle. Most
Yep.
people do.
There's Dallas with the snobs with Mercedes.
And then east, and then there's South Texas, where the Tex meets the Mex, like the food. And
Really?
then finally we get to Carthage, which is right behind the pine curtain.
Yeah.
This movie is just absolutely wonderful. Like, it shouldn't be as funny as it is. It shouldn't be as lighthearted as it is, and it shouldn't be as like unpopular as it is. Like, I've never met anyone who's seen this movie.
I
And that's
hadn't
just
met anyone who's seen this movie before you asked me to watch it, and here we
yeah.
are.
That's why the title is Why Bernie is the Best Mockumentary You Never Saw, because
Yep.
nobody's ever seen it, and that's why it's a hidden gem.
Yeah. But there's so many more, like those are a couple. There's so many more just of these one-liners. There's this isn't necessarily a one-liner, but there's the sheriff's obsession with the closet homosexuals. Which is,
Like they're just
it's the way Matthew McConaughey goes, the closet homosexuals.
mhm.
Then his wheel of misfortune. Which
Where
which of the deadbeat dads is he gonna go get today? Which of the drug dealers? Oh, we gotta spin the wheel and find out.
at one point he arrests deadbeat dads at a hands on a hard body contest.
Yep.
Which is just wonderful. We did steal the wheel of misfortune. That's something we are going to do at some point. Might as well announce that now while we have people watching. So if you want to subject us to some torture, send in your least favorite mockumentary or the mockumentary you think is the worst, and we will spin a wheel at the end of the month when it comes time, and we will pick one of those and sit through it with our eyes bleeding. Yeah. Anyway, back to this wonderful movie. It does garner a really decent Rotten Tomato score. It's an 88 Rotten Tomato. It's got a 73 audience score.
Yeah, Vicarious, you should definitely go check this out. It is beautiful. It is if you missed our description earlier, it's there we go. It is like this small it encapsulates the South. There's so many one-liners. There's an argument in church about the type of wine that Jesus made, that it's not that liquor store wine. There's a line where it goes from where Carthage is voted the best small town in Texas, then it cuts to the lady talking about people only live there because that's where they were born.
Like we're from the South.
Yeah.
So when we say this is encapsulating of the South, it's just because like I've met these people, if that makes sense.
If you grew up in the South, we're from Alabama, especially in Alabama, if you've been to smaller towns, this is what it's like.
Yeah.
One of my favorite lines, I forgot this line existed, but this is this might be my favorite line when I went back and rewatched the movie was when Lloyd calls Bernie. So for people who haven't seen it, Bernie, you already know where this is going.
Lloyd.
So Bernie shoots Marjorie, puts her in the deep freeze. We'll get to that line later. Puts her in the deep freeze, and her body is in the deep freeze for 9 months. And Lloyd, who is like the accountant who controls her money, is like the one person that actually cares about her enough to go after her, which is crazy to think about. She was dead for 9 months, and he's like, "Oh, she had a stroke. Oh, she's just at this hospital. Oh, she's here. Oh, she's that." And people are like, fair enough, okay. And then
Yeah.
he would come up with these things like, "Oh, like the guy who did her haircuts. Oh, she thought you didn't do a good enough job and charged too much." Like,
Which sounded like her.
which sounded like her, yeah. But then there's the line Lloyd just calls Bernie late one night and goes, "You're living in a world of guilt. All the police need to do is find one shred of evidence, and it's off to hell you go."
And Bernie's like, Lloyd, is that you?
And Lloyd just hangs up. But the way
Lloyd,
he says it's with the southern accent too. It's
I love how it's not off to
Beautiful.
jail. It's off to hell.
Yeah.
Like
it's off to hell you go.
oh, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Because like so part of the real story of this is when they found out that he had shot Marjorie and Marjorie was dead. They arrested him. He immediately confesses. And they have to move the trial out of Carthage in order to get a fair trial so they can convict him after he's confessed because he's that well liked.
Yeah, and they even talk about in the movie they got, and it was kind of satirical in the movie, but it's also true. It's like you never hear of cases where they have to move a trial because the person is so well liked they won't be convicted. He's like, normally you see stuff where a crime is so just heinous that it's like you're not like you have to move them out so that they just don't get convicted. Like
Right.
even if they didn't do it, people just assume that they did. Another funny line is Matthew McConaughey's sheriff. We might be dealing with a madman, a bona fide deranged killer, and he's talking to a bunch of kids after a baseball game.
He's
at a
giving them a
restaurant.
pep talk as they go to arrest him. He hands them like $20 for desserts.
Yep.
It's hilarious. Like
Yep. And then that cuts immediately to the clip we played earlier. That lady calls her sister, goes, "Hey, did you hear Bernie killed your sister Margie?" "Oh, honey, no, she's in a nursing home over in Temple." "No, she's in the deep freeze going to Dallas."
which is the South. Like
Yeah.
like that's a thing that like you know those people. I've met those people. Like that's
Mhm.
just a thing. This movie is wonderful. It actually like changed some things with the case against Bernie. And I'd like to talk about that, take a little break from the movie itself because this is just entertaining.
Go for it.
So shortly after entering the Texas Department of Criminal Justice in 1999, Bernie was attacked by fellow inmates. During his imprisonment, he was described by a prison official as a model prisoner. He taught health classes and participated in the prison's choir. Until May 2014, he was serving a life sentence. In May 2014, Davidson, Danny Buck, and a visiting judge, Diane DeVasto of Tyler, allowed Tita to be released from prison that month on $10,000 bail. After his attorney Jody Cole had learned that Tita had been sexually abused as a child for multiple years by an uncle. Cole theorized that Tita shot Nugent while in a brief dissociative episode brought on by her abusive treatment of him, a theory backed by forensic psychiatrist Richard Pezikoff. I'm going to skip a paragraph here. I'm just reading because I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't like dug a ton into this. Nugent's family learned about Tita's release through media reports. Her granddaughter expressed shock that the release was granted. Now, I do want to point out, this is the granddaughter that sued Marjorie. Anyway, and claimed that Richard Linklater's 2011 film, this one, had influenced the legal system. Between the time of his release in April 2014 and his resentencing hearing in April of 2016, Tita resided in Austin, Texas, at the garage apartment of filmmaker Richard Linklater, who had offered to assist him. This was a condition of his release. So the movie got him out of jail, and he stayed with the guy that made the movie. As far as I know, he didn't kill anybody else. He seems like a good guy.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. Like I mentioned earlier, it genuinely seems like, as crazy as it sounds, because he confesses he murdered her. It sounds like it was genuinely just like he just snapped and like, and that's not an excuse. Obviously, you're not trying to excuse what happened, but
Well,
it
they
is.
were when
Well,
he
yeah,
went when he went back to trial. That was the argument. I believe he got 99 years instead of just 50. But he's eligible for parole 6 years. 6 years from now, he'll be out 10 years early. And I mean, let's be honest, he's going to get paroled. Has to.
yeah.
Um, but
It's
yeah,
just a crazy case, but
it's
it's
absolutely insane. But it's a hilarious movie.
yeah. And so it's funny because going back to the movie, if you're good with that,
Yeah.
so like after, let me make sure I'm not missing anything from before, because I was gonna go to where we were at, and then after, oh yeah, there's the drinking and driving lesson, about don't drink and drive or you'll get in a car crash. And they have the kids pretending to be dead, and the one kid on the car started rolling him out laughing, and he goes, "Don't laugh."
Yes.
Um,
This movie, man,
yeah.
it's just it's so dark. Like
Mhm.
he's beloved. Everybody loves this funeral home guy. He kills a woman, and he only shot her in the back 4 times, not 5.
Yeah, I was about to get to that. So that's part of there's a probably 5 or 6 minute span of the people talking to Danny Buck, and they're like, you should just let him off. He's like, he shot her in the back 4 times. The first guy says he should have shoved a pillow in her face, and they would have, after a couple of days, they would have just ruled it natural, and he would have moved on and been fine.
He would have
Then
performed her funeral.
yeah, he would 3 days later, he would perform her funeral. Then there was Danny was in, I wanna say he was at, like, a restaurant getting some food, or was this at this no, yeah, I think this was at the restaurant getting food.
Yeah.
And the people were talking to him, I mean, it's like, "If I'm on that jury, I'm voting to acquit," and all this other stuff, and the, lady at the restaurant goes, It's not as bad as people say. He only shot her 4 times, not 5."
Like 5 is just some sort of like,
Mhm.
well, that's
Yeah.
when he obviously meant to kill her. The fifth.
Mhm. If it's under 5, let it go by. Let him go.
If it's under 5, she should be alive.
I don't know about that. But then this is the last note I have of a line, but then what might be, or this isn't a line, but might be the funniest part of the movie to me too. I know I said everything earlier, but either it's the first thing they do, they go to the trial. Do you know what's the first thing that they show?
I don't remember.
Danny Buck has him roll in the deep freeze. they they wheel the freezer that she was in into the courtroom so the jury can look inside of it. And then he goes, they had to thaw her out for 2 days to perform a proper autopsy.
I love when he's like trying to get Bernie or make Bernie look like some sort of monster, talking about how he flew first class.
Yeah, trying to make Bernie out to be this guy who is just obsessed with money and obsessed with the stuff that money can get you. He's like, I flew first class because she was there, and that's what she wanted to do. Oh, we stayed at this hotel because that's where she wanted to stay. It's like, that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, and when he was like left to my own devices, but left to someone else's devices, you be and like they talks about how he continued to spend the money on stuff like the church and the
Mhm.
town
And
and
buying a playset for the daughters, and
yeah, for like 2 random guys' daughters. Like it's just
mhm.
like by all accounts, he was the nicest guy. Like even real life Danny Buck, the real dude, said, I'm gonna try to find this. He said, "Oh, I saw it earlier. Give me just a second. I gotta find it again." He said that the town was split up in regards to their opinion of Tita. He recounted to the Longview News Journal, people remember Tita as being real nice and doing nice things, and they'd like my office to go real easy on him. And then there's a group that wants no mercy. Like, so even in real life, he was at least liked by about 50% of the people,
Yep.
which is more than most people.
Yep.
Yeah, it's impressive to be honest. Like,
Yeah. A part of the notes I'm using for this are from the first time we did it.
So for those of you who haven't seen any of our other work, which probably most of you, the second episode we ever did together was a review of this. I would like to argue that it probably killed our other show. So why not kill this one?
We had some good plays on it after, but yeah. So if you're wondering what type of notes I did at that time, I have the pager, which is when Marjorie gave Bernie the pager, so no matter where he was, she could page him and have him come back and help her. And then the other note I have is Marjorie got yeeted.
She did.
Yeah.
We were also younger then.
Yes.
This was before Grant's grandchildren came along. I'm kidding. I'm making the joke.
Yeah. So there's a couple parts through here, and it goes back all the way to I was talking about Danny Buck's obsession with the closet homosexuals. There's a line where he's talking about he always wore sandals. Now, I personally take offense to that because I'm from Florida and I wear chacos a lot, so I take offense to that. But he says that, and then it cuts to one of the old ladies going, "Our Lord and Savior wore sandals."
And he had 12 disciples, and they were all men. And the Apostle Paul was a lifelong bachelor, and it was something like, and you didn't hear people going around calling them gay.
Yeah. But then there's the line talking about I don't have enough context for this. I believe he was talking about a kiss he gave Marjorie, and he goes, "Wasn't a kiss you give to your mom or your grandma?"
Yeah. There was a whole section of this documentary where they were trying to figure out if Bernie was gay.
Yeah.
And the results were inconclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, sorry, looking at the chat.
Yeah, we got it.
We
got a totally not scam link here.
And considering the person popped in for a second and left, it's totally real. Anyway, this the back to Bernie. Maybe it's Bernie from prison. I don't know.
It's just so great. I go back to my favorite line rewatching it was "You're living in a world of guilt. All the police need to do is find one shred of evidence, and it's off to hell you go."
It's not jail. It's not prison. It's not even like you'll stand punishment. It's off to hell.
Yeah, and then it's funny with the guy later on where he goes, as how I see this is between God and Bernie, and I think it should stay that way. And then there's like, I think he should be let off. It's like, okay, man, what if he shot you? If you got shot in the back 4 times, would you want your killer to get off free? Checkmate.
And she's like, I'm voting to acquit. Yeah. It's hilarious. I just love how he's portrayed, and then like the crime, and he's still portrayed positively. Like he was just the man. But then that lines up, right? Like it just lines up. Now I will say the guy is so Meryl, the victim's sister, Marjorie's sister, her son, Joe Rhodes, attested to the movie's accurate portrayal of his aunt. He noted several acts of his aunt's abusive behavior towards him in the New York Times article titled "How My Aunt Marge Ended Up in the Deep Freeze," which is the most this movie thing I've ever seen. And I've got to go read it now because that's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I'm actually going to pull it up just to see if there's anything interesting. But I just love how my Aunt Marge ended up in the deep freeze. No, it's up there. It was written in 2012. So it's he says at the end of the second paragraph, it's a story about not people being what they seem, and it's a story, as the movie poster says, so unbelievable it must be true. And he then follows that up with, which it is. I know this because the widow in the freezer was in real life my Aunt Marge, Miss Marjorie Nugent, my mother's sister, and depending on whom you ask, the meanest woman in East Texas. She was 81 when she was murdered, and Bernie Tita, her constant companion and rumored paramour, was 38. He'll be eligible for parole in 2027 when he'll be 69. There are little things in Bernie that aren't exactly true, bits of dialogue and changed name here and there, but the big things, the weirdest things, the things you'd assume they would have to be made up for the movie, happened exactly as the movie says they did. The trial lawyers really did wear Stetsons and cowboy boots and really were named Danny Buck Davidson and Scrappy Holmes. Daddy Sam's Barbecue and bail bonds just a few blocks from the courthouse in Carthage, population 6,700, really does have a sign that says, you kill it, I'll cook it. And they really did find my Aunt Marge on top of the flounder and under the Marie Callender's chicken pot pies, wrapped in a lamb's end sheet. They had to wait 2 days to do the autopsy. It took her that long to fall. That I'll link that article in the description when we get done here.
Please do. I want to go read
That
this.
is wonderful. In like the worst sense, but it's hilarious.
Yeah.
He's got a picture of the deep freeze.
Do you know what's actually hilarious is I didn't think about this last time. My grandmother had one of those same deep freezes, or not the exact same, but very similar. Now we have it. We have a deep freeze almost exactly like that out in my garage, just to the left of me.
What's underneath the pot pies there, Grant?
The cat that's gonna come off. What's under yours?
I think my phone fell out of my pocket. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, sorry, I had to cover the sounds of the armadillo gun.
That's so funny too, is how he just refers to it as I shot her with the armadillo gun, just like
that makes it somehow better, right? Like,
yeah. I don't even think that's what he was trying to do. I think that's just the best way for him to describe it is like, oh, that's just her armadillo gun.
Yeah, and like, I don't think that he intent. I think first degree was a little strong.
Yeah, the intent there. It's one of the jokes in the movie of if he had the intent, he would have done differently. He would have put her in the plane and threw her body in the Gulf.
Exactly.
It's like that may be a little excessive, but it does like if you are doing it intentionally, this is gonna sound bad. If you're gonna do it intentionally, there are better ways than what happened. Like it would have been more well thought out than that. And then like taping the freezer shut. That if he didn't tape the freezer shut, they probably wouldn't have thought to look at the freezer.
Right, because who tapes the freezer shut?
Yeah.
So this guy also says, I've now seen the movie twice, and except for a few insignificant details, his like Aunt Marge's hair was never as long as Shirley MacLaine's. Danny Buck Davidson, short, doughy, and distinctly double-chinned, looked nothing like Matthew McConaughey. It tells the story pretty much the way it happened. Yeah.
Which I can 100% believe.
Yeah. He then says, as far as I know, my cousin Rod, Aunt Marge's only child, hasn't seen the movie yet, but I guarantee he won't like it. I wanted him to be a part of this article. I called his home a dozen times, getting nothing but the voicemail until finally his wife, Sylvia, answered. As soon as I told her why I was calling, she said, we don't want to talk to you, and immediately hung up.
Nice.
Yeah. So it happened exactly the way the movie says it did.
Yeah, which like I just said, I could 100% believe.
Yeah, but the thing is, we're so conditioned to believe that these based on true story things just make up so much.
Mm-hmm.
But it's true. And Bernie's really rotten in prison. I guess depending on how you look at it, kind of unfortunately, because it sounds like he really did have a messed up life.
Yeah, for sure. And he murdered her. Like that's not a question. The question is, was there the intent for a first degree, and then was there some other factor, which could be very interesting.
And if she was really abusing him, which nobody really seems to, I mean, even her nephew agrees. That kind of falls under a whole different policy entirely. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I hope he gets paroled personally. I don't really know why because I don't know
You
him.
want him to get paroled so we can interview him on the podcast. That's
That
why
would
you
be
want him to
great.
get
I was
paroled.
actually in Carthage like over the summer.
Nice.
I didn't
I'm
stop in to get the "You Kill It, We'll
and
Cook
I'm
It."
going to Texas very soon too. So
Stop by Carthage, take some pictures right by the diner.
I need to go find that diner.
Yes, you do. Like actually, I will.
I don't know
pay
where
you.
that is. I don't know where that is relative to where I'm going, but
You're heading to Texas, yeah. So it's
yeah.
on your way. It's East Texas. It's on your way.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so I guess without further ado, we should probably end it there.
Hey, what's up,
Hey,
detective?
what's up, detective? How you doing? I'm gonna put this comment on the screen. We are we're a little early today. We had some stuff going on, so yeah. I think the recording of this will be up in just a minute if you
Mhm.
wanna watch it. It is entertaining as all get out. The movie is fantastic, and yeah, my personal favorite thing we learned today, detective, just to catch you up, is the guy whose aunt was murdered in this movie wrote an article for the New York Times called "How My Aunt Marge Ended Up in the Deep Freeze."
If that doesn't get you interested in this movie, if you haven't seen it, I don't know what does.
Yeah, it's a good one. I guess we should go ahead and go through our criteria just to wrap up the episode. So, Grant, do you think this movie did what it set out to do?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It nailed the entire southernness. That's a horrible description. The movie nailed it. And even when you have the nephew of the lady who got murdered, you go, "Oh yeah, this movie is accurate," and you see what happens in the movie. That's fantastic.
yeah. Like it's so weird that you think it has to be made up, but it just isn't. It's crazy. Yeah, I think it succeeded at doing what it wanted to do. Maybe did a little bit more because it did help Bernie get out of prison for a couple of years. I still can't believe he stayed with the director. That's hilarious. Like we almost want to see Bernie 2.
But unless he gets out and kills someone else, I don't think that's gonna happen. But
No, but it would be hilarious. It would also be hilarious if he got out and like shot, went and dug her up and shot her again or something that way. It'd be fine. I don't know. This movie's so dark. I feel like my sense of humor has just morphed. Anyway, so after that, do you think it's overrated, underrated? I guess in this case, it's not really rated. Well, the audience scores low on it, in my opinion.
it's underrated for sure. In terms of reach, in terms of I don't even know what the rating is exactly, but it doesn't matter.
It's
Whatever it
88
is,
critics, 74 audience.
the audience is low. Critic is, I would say, fair. Audience is definitely low, and I don't know how much money it made. I know we talked about that with some other stuff, but I would
It was
imagine
this movie had a budget of $6 million and it made $10 million.
yeah, that's way under what I would have guessed.
Well, you got to imagine most of the budget went to paying Jack Black
And Matthew McConaughey.
and Shirley MacLaine. Yeah. But like, it's
But
not.
This movie's underrated. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's hilarious. Next one, is it rewatchable? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Grant had me watch it for the first time 3 years ago, and I was excited to go back and watch it again for this.
Yeah, I've seen it probably 5 or 6 times. I love it. It gets better every time. You know where the lines are going to be, and they're still hilarious.
And I always catch some little detail, like if you're still the one you're a detective, there's a line in the movie after Bernie kills her, like Burger, I can't remember what his title is, but he calls and he goes, "All the police need is a single shred of evidence, then off to hell you go."
Which, gosh, that's just so well written. Like I hope that somebody actually said that, because that is just amazing.
Yep.
And I guess our final thing is pass or fail, right? Or am I missing one? It's a pass. It just has it meets all the criteria we're looking for. It's a really good movie, and nobody's ever seen it. So if you watch it, let us know. I think we're going to be asking some questions, kind of what your thoughts are here on the Instagram, the Twitters, all that here in the next few days. Give you some time to watch it. But yeah, I'm curious to know if you think that we're right or wrong about this one. So yeah, be sure to leave some flaming hate mail if you think we're just way off. But yeah, without further ado, I guess we probably should begin to wrap this up. I will say we will be back at our normal time next week. So if you want to tune in at 7:30 Eastern or 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern,
You can figure out the
5:30
rest.
Pacific, yeah, and you know what? 6:30 Mountain. That's all of the continental U.S. And if you're in Hawaii, I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Aloha. But yeah, we will be back at our normal time then. So if you want to support us and all of this amazing work that we pretend to do, you can do that by going over to patreon.com/theculturednerd. You can support the entire network, and then there are tiers for each show as well. All you have to do is click on through the monocle and figure out a way to throw your money at the screen. Then, as always, I've been your host, Grant Ingram.
And I've been your co-host, Grant Skillen. Thank you. Thank you to our Patreon supporters. The list here on the screen. I'm not sure if this list is accurate from when we did the episode with Taylor. It looked like it might have been a different list. I don't know. But thank you if you are on this list or not and you're supporting us. Thank you to Jose for the logo. I don't know if I've mentioned thank you, Taylor, for our intro. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. As PBS says, this show is done because of viewers like you. So please leave a like, subscribe, and if you want to check out the rest of what the Culture Nerd has to offer, just scan that QR code there on the left. And if you want to check out our other show, which is in desperate need of attention, check out that little QR code on the right. And yeah, we'll be back here next week to talk about Best in Show. Same bat time, same bat channel.